following on from my last video, right, I now have my template I've just cut out onto my sheet of metal, and I've just got to draw around it to then get me cutter and cut the shape out. I've already drawn around it. I don't know if you can quite see really. So I'll draw around it, so I've got my lines, I know where to cut anyway. So let me go and get my cutting machine. Go and find my angle grinder. Somewhere in here hiding. Oh, here we are. Angle grinder. Right, we'll take this to my bed of metal where we can do a bit of cutting. So here we go. Right, there we go, bit of metal cut out, a little bit warm, just got to go and clean it up around the edges, and then I'm going to offer it up to the door and just see roughly how it's going. Right, let's take me a bit of metal I've just cut, let's go to the motorhome, my lovely Sportsman, and then we'll see how this fits. Right, here we are, we're there now. Right, let's get the bit of metal. Let's have a little see if it fits. Here we go, so that's going to go in there, which is going to be perfect. Alright, there we go, so a little bit of trimming and that'll fit nicely. Obviously I've got to trim that end, I didn't cut that end because I weren't quite sure how long to do it. And then all I've got to do now is do my framework down here and along here and then back up here again. Once my framework's in, I can then attempt to weld these two together and weld it to my frame. There's the bit of metal I've cut out, fits perfectly. I've got my special magnet masking tape to hold it on, so that works really well. So that looks good in that bit. Now I've just got to measure out a bit of frame. Obviously I've got to trim the bottom of the door because it's a little bit too large. So we'll go and let's have a measure of the frame. Okay, so you can see with the front side of the door, this is my framework which is inside, and so I'm going to have to sort of obviously trim it somewhere up here. I'm going to put a bit of metal in there, most probably double the width of that, and then bend it so it's a thicker bit of metal, and then weld it in here, and then that should cure hopefully the front part onto the outer side of the door. Oh, the wind's caught it. And so as you can see, it's really badly rotten here, which it was, all the bit I cut out anyway originally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a bit of metal about the length of this and double it in its side, bend it over so the metal's a bit thick, and then obviously fabricate it in to make the framework for this side of the door. Okay, back to the front of the door, we're going to measure up a strip of metal which I need to cut out. So I'm going to go roughly, it's going to be about 1 inch wide, and I would say I'm going to cut it about 7.5 inches long. So that's all I need to do. I'll go back to my bit of metal. Right, back at the bit of metal. So I've measured out my inches there, and that's by my 7.5. So I've doubled it. So then I'm going to put a fold in here and make it a bit thicker metal for the framework for the door. So I'll cut this line here and this little bit off here, and then I'll bend it, and then I'll take it back to the door and see how much I've got to bend it, and then I've got to find a bit of metal on the door once I've ground a little bit of back off to be able to weld it to. So bear with me. Okay, right, I've got my measurements all lined out on here, got my cutter. So I'm just going to cut this out, and then I'm going to bend it down that line in the middle, which will double the thickness, and that'll be the start of my door frame. So let me just cut this out. a bend in it, and let's get it into one size. So let's go to my little bending machine. It's not huge, but this will do the job. So hopefully you'll be able to see this. I've just got to set it up and then we'll go through the bending process. Okay, got my bit of metal in there, set to 1 inch with one of these technical things. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we're at 1 inch. Now we're going to bend it a little bit so then I can put it into the vise, and then I'll finish it off so it's completely bent in half and making one part. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So let's just give this a go. Oh, it's working, I think. Okay, right, let's have a look to see. Right, take my bit of metal out, if I can get it out, that is. Hard with a bit one-handed. Right, we're going to come over and I'm just going to put it in there, and then we're going to bend it so it's in half, as in we're going to squeeze that into one. So bear with me a minute. Right, got my bit of metal in here. I just got to make this a little bit more. Push that through. It's a little bit round. I've got to get it more flat. Right, that looks like a lot better. So that's going to now make it easier for me to now pinch together. Fingers crossed. We'll do it in little bits just to make sure it works okay. Now I'm not quite sure it is going to work, so we all can have a laugh in a minute if it doesn't. So fingers crossed. If I tighten this, I'm hoping, I think it's working, I'm not too sure. Right, let's move it along a bit. As you can see, I haven't got a brilliant workshop, so we've got to make do with what we got. So what I'll do is I'll just keep pushing this in. Hopefully it looks like it's working. Right, we'll move it along a bit. We'll keep going until it's pretty much flat, as long as I don't get my fingers stuck in there. Right, it seems to be working all right. So, oh, that was a bit exciting. Okay, we'll carry on. I should have been holding it really, I think, but no, it's not liking it at all. So let's turn it around. Let's go back this way a little bit. That's looking pretty good. Right, let's just clamp this and make sure it's straight. We'll squash it in there. Oh, that's better. That's that end. Right, let's clamp this end. Just straighten it out a bit. Right. Yeah, that is perfect. My God, that was a bit tough. Okay, as you can see now, it's flipped over. Now it's not quite in half, but when I had a look at the old frame, there was a little bit like this, and it does lap like that. So I've decided to do it that way. So just got to go and have a measure up. I might have to trim this bit a little bit because obviously I need my inch along here. So I'm just going to go and have a look and see if that fits okay, or I'm going to take a little bit off there. Okay, that's the first bit of the frame we just did. I've just had to trim that across the top there so it lines up with that body bit, because that's obviously the area where I'm going to weld about there. I've just got to round this a little bit to like half moon it, just so it fits in nicely. So I'm quite happy with that. Obviously I've got to then take all the paint off here, so I've got a clear bit to weld to. So the start of the frame seems to be working. Thought I'll put the other bit of metal on by my trusted magnets. They're really cool there. And obviously this bit's coming down, so I've left this little bit here because obviously I've got to trim the bottom of this because it's just a little bit larger than I wanted. And then I can then make a section in here and then a long bit of frame along here, and obviously fabricate then this side for the other bit of framework. So fingers crossed.